Most superstars protected their bodies. Guy Lafleur chased the night. The ice was the performance. The party was the routine. Goals came easy. Sleep didn't. The partying wasn't new. It traced back to the pressures that started when he was born.
There's one they're calling the new Beliveau. His name is Guy Lafleur.
September 20th, 1951. Thurso, Quebec, a province that treated hockey like religion and its stars like saints. Guy Lafleur was born into a territory where Maurice Richard wasn't just a player, but a symbol, where every kid with talent got measured against legends before they hit puberty. By the time Lafleur turned 15, people were already making the comparison. The pressure didn't build gradually. It arrived fully formed. He joined the Quebec Remparts of the QMJHL in 1969, and the dominance was immediate. In 2 junior seasons, he scored 233 goals. One of those seasons, 130 goals. Junior hockey had never seen anything like it. Those numbers were beyond impressive for a teenager. In Quebec, many fans and media were already treating him as the future cornerstone of a Stanley Cup winner. Jean Beliveau, the Canadiens legend who had just retired, offered advice that revealed how early the weight had settled on Lafleur's shoulders. Don't try to be a second Jean Beliveau. Be the first Guy Lafleur. Take a number and make it your own. The fact that this conversation was necessary before Lafleur even reached the NHL showed what kind of burden he was walking into. Montreal GM Sam Pollock knew what he had. He traded with the California Golden Seals to secure the first overall pick in the 1971 NHL draft, and when the moment came, there was no debate. Guy Lafleur went first.
From the Quebec Remparts, Guy Lafleur.
The kid from Thurso was heading to the Montreal Forum, where the ghosts of Richard and Beliveau still lingered in every corner, where the fans expected perfection and the media demanded it immediately. Everyone knew he'd be a star. What they didn't know, the star would burn way too bright. His first 3 seasons in Montreal, they were a disaster, and the reason why reveals everything. Guy Lafleur arrived at the Montreal Forum in 1971, carrying expectations no teenager should have to bear. The Canadiens were deep with veteran talent, which meant ice time came in short bursts. His first season produced 29 goals and 35 assists, good enough for 5th on the team, but nowhere near what the fans demanded from a first overall pick.
Didn't play much the first 3 years and didn't have any confidence.
Marcel Dion, drafted 2nd by Detroit, was lighting up scoreboards immediately. The comparison wasn't subtle, and the verdict from Montreal's notoriously harsh media was brutal. Some called him the worst first overall pick in franchise history. The second season brought 28 goals. The third, just 21. Lafleur was playing in a defensive system that strangled creativity, where every rush had to follow structure and every mistake drew scrutiny. The fans who had cheered his junior heroics now booed him at the Forum. Scotty Bowman, who coached Lafleur through those early years, later admitted the pressure was unlike anything he'd seen. I don't think any other player would have had the fanfare and the pressure that Guy had coming into Montreal in 1971, Bowman said. The weight wasn't just about performance. It was about identity, about living up to Richard and Beliveau in a city that refused to accept anything less.
The expectations were too high. He came as Jean Beliveau retired. They thought that Lafleur was coming in to replace Beliveau.
Then something shifted. Before the 1974-75 season, Lafleur made a simple decision that would become symbolic of everything that followed. He took off his helmet and never put it back on.
After those 3 years, he became the #1 player in the league by a country mile.
The blonde hair flew behind him on every rush, and suddenly the player everyone expected to see finally appeared. That season, he exploded for 53 goals and 119 points, shattering the Canadiens' single-season records. The system hadn't changed. Lafleur just stopped trying to fit inside it. What followed was historic. 6 consecutive seasons of 50 goals and 100 points, the first player in NHL history to do it. In 1976-77, he posted 136 points, a franchise record that still stands. The Canadiens won 4 straight Stanley Cups from 1976 to 1979, and Lafleur wasn't just leading them. He was rewriting what stardom looked like in Montreal. Suddenly, he wasn't just the best player in hockey. He was supernatural. The cameras showed a superstar. They didn't show what it took to stay one. Between periods during games, while other players hydrated and caught their breath, Lafleur disappeared. Scotty Bowman didn't want smoking in the locker room, so Lafleur and about 10 other players would hide in hallways and bathrooms, lighting up cigarettes before the next period started. Joe Sakic, who roomed with Lafleur years later on the Nordiques, watched the ritual continue into his late 30s. He'd smoke in the hotel room, but always in the bathroom, Sakic said. I told him he didn't have to do that. I mean, I was in awe of him. The smoking wasn't just hidden or occasional. It was constant, habitual, and apparently non-negotiable. But the cigarettes were just a visible part of a lifestyle that would have ended most careers before they started. February 1978. Lafleur scored twice in a playoff game against the Bruins. The Forum erupts. By midnight, he's at a downtown bar surrounded by teammates and strangers buying rounds. By 3 a.m., the bar's closing and he's still there. By 6 a.m., he stumbles into his apartment. Practice is at 10, he shows up. That night, against Detroit, he scored again. This wasn't occasional. This was the routine. Lafleur admitted years later what his peak years actually looked like off the ice. I went out almost every night with the guys on the team between 1975 and 1981, he said. We were winning in those years. It was fun. I felt obliged to go out with the guys on the team. They were friends. I didn't want a barrier. It brought us closer. The partying wasn't just about celebration. It was survival. The pressure in Montreal was relentless. The expectations impossible to meet even when he was meeting them. Every goal had to be followed by another. Every cup had to lead to the next. Lafleur once described the suffocating reality of playing in the Forum. The fans and journalists here always expected a Stanley Cup. They don't want you to slip from year to year. If you score 60 goals one year and 55 the next, it isn't considered good. So he found release in Montreal's nightlife, in bars where strangers bought him drinks and nobody cared whether he scored tomorrow. The chaos became the escape valve that kept the pressure from crushing him completely. Then came March 24th, 1981. After a night of dining and drinking with teammate Robert Picard, Lafleur fell asleep behind the wheel of his Cadillac on the drive home. The car crashed into a highway fence and a metal signpost pierced through the windshield, missing his head by an inch and tearing off part of his right ear. He spent 2 days in the hospital getting plastic surgery. The accident was a wake-up call that should have changed everything. I decided to slow down after that, Lafleur said. I realized that my family was more important to me than downtown nightlife. The night crowd doesn't give a bleep as long as you bring the money in. When trouble comes, it's your family that supports you. The promise to slow down after the car accident lasted about as long as the stitches in his ear. Lafleur kept playing, kept producing, but the 1980-81 season, in which he nearly died, marked the beginning of the end. He appeared in only 51 games that year and scored 27 goals, breaking his streak of 6 straight 50-goal seasons. The body that had absorbed years of cigarettes, late nights, and high-speed crashes was starting to send the bill. The Canadiens' dynasty had already crumbled. Ken Dryden, Jacques Lemaire, and other key players retired after 1979, and Montreal lost in the second round of the 1980 playoffs. The team that had won 4 straight cups was gone, and Lafleur was now carrying a roster that couldn't match the talent he had played with during the glory years. By 1983-84, he could still score. He led the team with 70 points in 80 games. But the gap between what he was and what he'd been was impossible to ignore. The explosive speed had dulled. The hangovers that used to disappear by puck drop now lingered through the game. Then Jacques Lemaire, his former line mate during the Cup years, became head coach, and everything fell apart. Lemaire preached defensive hockey. Lafleur had built a career on offensive instincts. Lemaire cut his ice time, buried him on the third line, and kept him off the power play. The promises to restore his role never came. In the 1984 playoffs, Lafleur sat on the bench during crucial moments while younger players took his shift. Lafleur requested a trade. Serge Savard refused. You don't trade the columns of your temple. 19 games into the 1984-85 season, Lafleur had 2 goals. The fans booed. On November 26, 1984, at 33 years old, Guy Lafleur retired.
Basically forced into retirement.
3 years in retirement. Everyone assumed the story was over. They were wrong. Lafleur didn't file official retirement papers with the league when he walked away in 1984. He took a job in the Canadiens' public relations department, but it lasted less than a year. The office life didn't fit. Instead, he played charity games with the Canadiens alumni team across Canada, staying in game shape while the anger from how Montreal had treated him festered. In September 1988, weeks after being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, Lafleur signed with the New York Rangers at age 37. Phil Esposito offered him a chance to play with old friends Chris Nyland and Marcel Dion under coach Michael Bergeron. Montreal was stunned. Their most beloved player was suiting up for another team, and he made it clear that this wasn't about nostalgia. This was about proving Lemaire and Savard had been wrong. His first game back at the Forum on February 4th, 1989, the crowd chanted his name throughout the night. Lafleur scored twice in a loss and was named the first star. He finished the season with 45 points in 67 games, showing he still had the speed and touch that made him dangerous. Then, he made sure Montreal would never forget. After one season in New York, Lafleur signed with the Quebec Nordiques, Montreal's provincial rival. The Los Angeles Kings had offered him $1 million to play alongside Wayne Gretzky, which would have made him the third highest paid player in the league. Lafleur turned it down. He wanted to finish his career in Quebec, but not with the team that had pushed him out. The Nordiques were the perfect middle finger.
Number 10, Guy Lafleur.
The habits hadn't changed. The late nights continued. At 38 years old, playing for the worst team in the NHL, Lafleur still managed to score and mentor a young center named Joe Sakic, who would become a legend himself. On March 30th, 1991, in his final NHL game against Montreal at the Forum, the crowd gave him a standing ovation every time he touched the puck. When the game ended, Lafleur skated off the ice on his own terms at age 39. The career totals read 560 goals, 793 assists, 1,353 points, and 5 Stanley Cups. He never apologized for a single cigarette. He never regretted the chaos. And he never let Montreal forget what they gave up when they chose control over greatness. The final bill came decades later. In September 2019, Lafleur underwent quadruple bypass heart surgery. 2 months later, doctors removed 1/3 of his right lung. By October 2020, the lung cancer had returned. The cigarettes he had smoked from his teenage years through his late 60s had finally caught up. By 2020, while undergoing treatment for heart and lung issues, Lafleur said he had finally stopped smoking, calling it a permanent decision and adding that he didn't miss it because life was too short. 18 months later, he was dead. April 22nd, 2022. Exactly 1 week after Mike Bossy, another chain-smoking superstar from the same era, died of the same disease. The what-ifs write themselves. If Lafleur had trained like Gretzky, eaten like a modern athlete, and avoided the nightlife and the cigarettes, could he have played until 45? Could he have won 8 cups instead of 5? Could he have shattered every Canadiens record instead of just most of them? Sports science today would never allow a player to live the way he did, and the data would prove they were right to stop it. But here's what the data can't measure. Ken Dryden, who played goal in front of Lafleur during the dynasty years, said something that cuts through every argument about discipline and longevity. In his own mind, he was not a superstar.
Not a star, nor a Superman.
The pressure of being Guy Lafleur in Montreal was unbearable in ways that statistics will never capture. The nightlife wasn't rebellion. It was the only way he knew to stay human under expectations that would have crushed anyone else. Wayne Gretzky followed Lafleur around like a puppy during the 1981 Canada Cup, studying every move his idol made. Years later, Gretzky remembered asking why Lafleur didn't wear shoulder pads. He said that he was quicker and faster without wearing full shoulder pads, Gretzky recalled. That answer reveals everything about how Lafleur approached hockey. He stripped away anything that slowed him down, whether it was equipment or rules or expectations, and played purely on instinct. Lafleur represented the last generation of superstars who refused to be manufactured, who played on feel rather than analytics, who treated hockey like art rather than a complex problem. He burned bright, burned fast, and when the smoke cleared, Quebec still tells his story like gospel. If you want hockey stories that don't protect reputations or sanitize the past, hit subscribe. Skates and Scars tells the stories exactly where the highlight reel cuts off and the league stops talking. No legends, no heroes, just exactly what happened.